it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to another video. So this video today is going to be for the challenge #1 stamp set 1 card hop, where you have to use an entire stamp set on 1 card. So the stamp set I'm using is Kindred Stamps Magic Show. You saw it there. So we're going to show you how to create this, and we're going to create a fun fold card. So the first thing that I did was I took the MFT Stencil Stargazer and used 2 different colors of Distress Oxide. I used Blueprint Sketch and Chipped Sapphire to create the background. I created 3 of these, one as a full panel for the front, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then the other 2 are 4 by 5 1/4 for the inside panels. I created them the same way, so I only showed me creating one. So I'm going to use both colors of this Distress Oxide. It's going to bring out the blue in the Magician's Cape, and sorry for the shaking. This is a new angle for me, so I hope you guys like this. I got a new mount for my camera. It is one of the just clip-on ones that's about $25 from Amazon. So super excited to be able to get to use it. So this is the first time I'm using it. I'm gonna get a little better. So I'm taking a spray bottle and spritzing some water on the background and then using my Norwex cloth to just mop up some of that. So it's going to oxidize it a little bit. So now what I'm doing is I've already stamped and colored the pieces. I'm taking a black marker. You can take any black marker and go around the edges of all of your cutout pieces. If you are trying to get something to make it look like, if you either use your scan and cut right up to the black line, it doesn't always cut out perfectly. This is a great way to make it look like it does. You just take your black marker and go around all the edges of all the images, and it makes it look a little bit more finished. So that's what I'm doing here to just kind of, make, like I said, make it look finished. And I am going to now work on the front of the card. So the next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to try to keep it to as much of a 1 stamp set as possible. So I didn't want to use a lot of additional supplies. So I thought I can make a wooden background, kind of like the wooden floor of a stage. So I cut out a piece of white cardstock and I inked it up with Distress ink in tea dye, and you can see my Distress ink is pretty dry here. I'm gonna have to get a re-inker for this one or a new pad because it just really wasn't going on that well. It's a light color anyway. So the next thing that I did was I took out my Martha Stewart scoreboard and I'm going to create the lines in it. So you can do this on the front or the back, and you just score at different intervals and create lines for the bases, the board bases, whatever those, the floorboards. That's what I was trying to say, sorry. And then I just go every other one and pick a measurement and just score every other board to make it look like a wooden floor. So once I've completed all of this, I'm going to take some Distress Oxide in a Vintage Photo and go over it to kind of give it a, like hardwood floors aren't all the exact same color. So I wanted to give it a little bit of depth and dimension. So you'll see that I put the board away and then I take out that Distress Oxide and go over the whole entire piece just to give it a little bit more, like I said, depth and dimension. So this was a very fun challenge. I had to go through my stamps several times to try to find one that coordinates, that didn't have sentiments that kind of competed with each other, because I had a lot of happy birthday but then other occasions on there, so it was hard to pick a stamp set for this. So now I'm going to cut down that piece off screen so that the floor can be a little bit smaller. I was trying to figure out how big I wanted the floor. I wanted to see if it wanted to be a whole stage, and I put my images out there. So I used the Magician, the bunny and the hat, and the table for the front of the card. So I cut it down, and I'm getting ready to put my sentiment on the front. So I stamped "Wanna See a Magic Trick" with MFT's white ink, and I believe that is the Sweet Tooth Pigment ink. I only have one real pigment ink in the white. This is the only pigment ink that I own because I think that the white is, it stamps much nicer than I don't think there really are white dye inks. I don't know, but I used the pigment ink and I stamped it here, and I was very careful. I put it to the side and then I moved it, and I think you'll see me restamp it in a minute on the back because I smudged it. So, and I apologize for my camera angle. It's a little bit off. I have to kind of realize where my, I have to move my mat over a little bit. So now I'm just going over the edges with Distress Oxide. Since I cut it down, I didn't want the white edges of the core of the paper to be showing. So I just kind of went all around the edges, again, to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. And then we're gonna get ready to start gluing the pieces down. And this is when I smudged it. See right there? Smudged it, and I was gonna leave it, and I was gonna see if I could take a black marker and go over it, but I decided I had the stamp in there again. Let's just stamp it. And you'll probably notice, I can see it in my stamping tool, that you can actually see the sentiment stamped onto the black foam because that pigment ink takes a really, really long time to dry. So it actually transferred over onto the black foam mat. Now I put that off to the side in my stamp positioner so that I wasn't going to touch it and ruin it again. And now I'm going to get ready to glue the pieces down. And I'm going to use my ATG gun. Now I brought this down the shore this weekend so that I could finish putting my dad's Father's Day card together. And you'll notice I have to keep moving the tape, the white piece of the tape, because the tape actually broke. So like the white part actually split. So I had to kind of revamp it so that I could use it again. I could use the rest of the roll. Oh, anyway. Gluing down the pieces with the Zig 2A glue pen, the larger one, and as well as the ATG gun. And I'm also going to use a pop dot for the hat and the bunny because the colors of the tablecloth on the table were so close to it. I thought popping it up would just give it a little bit more dimension and make it stand out a little bit more from the back of the table. So I'm using my Zig 2A glue pen to glue everything down with the exception of the bunny. And you can see my pieces on the side of the foam tape. Now this is from just like a sheet of circles of pop dots, but I always save these little pieces, and that one goes flying. But I always save those extra pieces because you can use all of the leftover pieces as pop dots, especially if you're doing a large image. You can actually just cut it to fit your image. So I always keep those. Oops. And I was realizing that I turned it upside down, and I'm going to see how it fits on the front. So that piece fits perfectly on the front of the card. Like I said, that's the same size as the card front. The interior pieces are about a quarter of an inch shorter than the card base. So I'm just going to use my ATG and glue them down. You'll see there that white piece of tape just keeps moving, and I'm going to have to open it up and adjust it. So I guess that's another good thing. You guys get to see how to adjust it if that happens to you. And it keeps happening. I'm trying not to waste that much tape because that's still half a roll that's left. And they're pretty expensive. They're like $10 for 2 rolls. So I don't want to waste half of a roll. So putting glue on the back of it and gluing both of the pieces together, and then you saw the black piece, that's going to create a W in the middle, and we're going to put some images on that. So you'll see that in a minute. Now I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do with my sentiment. I had some black scrap cardstock laying around. So I just cut it down to 1 inch wide, and it's a little bit longer than the sentiment. And the sentiment is, let me just measure it out for you guys real quick. It is 3 inches, so I think it's about 3.5 inches. So I think I did almost 4 inches. It might have been like 3 3/4 inches, but I can't tell from here. I didn't measure that out on camera. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp out that sentiment, and I lined it up in my stamp positioner and used the exact same Sweet Tooth pigment ink for this. So I like the little pop of black color on that because the card base is black, and then the sentiments being stamped in white on black cardstock just makes it really pop out. Now I probably should have stamped this more than I did because the magical birthday didn't get, the top of it didn't get stamped as well, but I didn't want to overdo it because with the pigment ink it spreads very easily, so you have to be careful. I just kind of gently tap it down. You'll notice that other times I'll put more pressure on it. This I'm just kind of gently tapping down. I probably should have stamped it more than once. You can really see it there. And then I'm going to, there's the W piece, and my camera died on me, so I will tell you the dimensions of the W piece. It is 1.5 by 11, and then it's scored at 2 3/4, 5.5, and 8 1/4. I'll have all those dimensions down in the more information section. And these are the pieces that are going to go on that W. So those are 3 by 2.5, because it's a little bit shorter. Yeah, so it's 3 by 2.5. And I took the 4 remaining sentiments, abracadabra, poof, another year disappeared, and ta-da, because I had to use all of them, and I stamped them out on those pieces of cardstock. And you'll see I did 3 of the washi tapes before. I just wanted to show you guys just one. I didn't want you to sit through all of it because it's kind of repetitive and you don't really want to see that. So it's just lining them up. I put images and a sentiment on every single one of them. So I just kind of put them in all different spots on the paper and stamped them out. And I stamped them out with the chipped Sapphire Distress ink, I believe. I believe it was the darker one. I'm just moving the images to the side and making sure that's definitely not straight. That's a little bit more straight. So I'm just stamping those out. And I found this washi tape. It was actually just sitting on my desk, and it looked perfect because the curtains have the stars in them, and then there was the dark blue, and the background was dark blue, and I just thought that it looked really nice together. So I decided to go ahead and use it. Sometimes being, kind of being lazy and not putting things away works out in your favor because it was just sitting on my desk. Otherwise, I wouldn't have used it. And I like the way the washi tape looks on these. I think they looked a little bit too plain without it. So all you do is take a piece of washi tape that's a little bit larger than that little piece of cardstock and put it on. And then I just wrapped the additional pieces around the back of it. And it fit perfectly. The largest image that I have for these pages, and sorry about the top of my head, these little cards, was the girl magician, and she fit perfectly onto the ta-da one. So I was super happy with the way that it came out. I really kind of got lucky with my measurements. I kind of just winged it and it worked out. Normally with this kind of card, since it's a fun fold, I would do a kind of a trial one. The only thing that I did a trial of was the W piece so that I could work out the measurements for that, but it all worked out in the end. So you see I stamped everything out, and now I'm just picking the images that go onto each piece. So first I'm going to use my Zig 2A glue pen to glue down the dove, and then the rings and the girl and the cards. So those were all colored with Copic markers, and it's just very basic coloring, which is why I didn't include it. I used a lot of the Copic Chow markers that I got for 97 cents the other day at Michael's, which I was super excited about. And it just, it was just very, very easy coloring. And you can see I stamped on the back. I was down the shore when I stamped these out, and I only had one piece of cardstock, and I messed up. The cardstock actually moved. So I decided, well, turn it on the back and stamp that. And I just colored it tonight. So there's everything. And then I'm just going to get ready to assemble the rest of the card. It's actually pretty easy. So I rounded the corners with my Crop-A-Dile on the 1/4 inch side, and I didn't measure this out. I probably should have done a little bit of a better job of measuring this out, but I didn't. I thought I was going to have it all the way to the right, but then I decided to make it a little bit more centered on that panel because that's what I had originally thought I was going with, but I go back and forth with a lot of things. So I picked it up before it was glued down all the way and kind of made it a little bit more centered and just gave a little bit of a border on the bottom. I probably should have cut that piece down a little bit to a little bit shorter than what I did because the the white panels with the washi tape on it pretty much just fit on here. So the easiest way to assemble this is to put tape on both sides of that W piece, put it into position, and fold it over. Now that kind of made it to where one end was shorter than the other. You could see a little bit more of the background, so I just pulled that off and moved it down just a little bit. That doesn't really matter. And then closed it up. I probably should, if I do this card again, I would actually put the front on before I do this W piece, but I was so excited to do the W piece. And then I was just laying them out to where I, the order that I wanted them to go. So I did abracadabra, poof, the ta-da, and then another year has disappeared. So now this is when I realized that the pieces are a little bit too tall if I lined it up with the bottom of the W piece. So instead I put glue a little bit on top of so it didn't line up to the edge, so it kind of hangs over it a teeny tiny bit, but I also didn't want it to get in the way of the sentiment of the have a magical birthday, if that makes sense. So I just, it's hanging a little bit underneath where the W piece is. Now you can center these. If you don't have that sentiment down at the bottom, you could center these and have them right in the middle. This is just the way that it worked out because I had to use all of the sentiments and I couldn't find another place for that have a magical birthday. And I wanted it to kind of be like a magic trick as you go through abracadabra, poof, ta-da, and then the end. And there you go. I have to fix the ATG gun again, because that roll just is giving me such a hard time. The girls were like, I didn't do that, did I? I said, no, it just happens. It's very fragile and it, sometimes it just snaps. But I do love my ATG gun. So now I'm just attaching the last two on there, and it was super easy to do. I'm just lining them up, having it be 1/4 of an inch shorter than the little panels on each one just gave it a little bit more room to move. So you can do them as wide or as tall as you want. Those are just the dimensions that I used. Again, that was 2.5 by 3 inches for those papers. So it just folds super easy. And see, this is why I probably would have put the front on, because it was a little bit difficult to put it on when the middle was already assembled, but not a big deal. I'm just gluing my sentiment on the front of it, which is wanna see a magic trick. I use my Zig 2-way glue pen, the larger one, and then just use my ATG tape on the back. And again, I probably would have put the ATG on first and then done the pop dot, because it was, it's a little bit harder to do that, to put the ATG on the back of it when you have something that's popped up, but not impossible. So I'm just gonna put the card front on, and that's it. That's the card for today. So I hope you guys try out this W fold card. It was super simple to make. If you do, send me a link to it. I would love to see the card. And I'm gonna show you, that's the front, and then you're gonna see the interior piece, and I love the way it looks. I love the pop-up feature. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll see you again in another video.